I am Philip Alder, MAPS coach. Craig Zuber, who many of you work with, is my coach. And he and I are bringing our groups together today to hear from and be with an amazing human being who you see on the screen, Kikkan Randall. Kikkan, I'm going to try and get this right. You correct me if I'm wrong. 5-time U.S. Olympian, right?
Yes.
First woman to win world championship, to medal in the world championships, right?
Yep.
And the first American to win gold in a Nordic skiing event. Is that?
Yes, although I do share that title with my teammate, Jesse Diggins.
Share that with Jesse, exactly, in the team sprint. So for those of you who don't know, I live in Anchorage, Alaska. Kikkan is here as well. And I remember watching the 2018 Olympics with our daughters, who at the time were 9 and 5. And I was watching that race, and there were three amazing things that were happening. Number one, someone was from Alaska. Now that we thought was pretty cool. Number two, they were winning. That was really cool. And number three, it was an incredible athlete and a female athlete. And as a dad of daughters, that was hugely motivational. So for me, this is now a 4-year, closing the loop on being with somebody that has indirectly already influenced our kids in our lives. So thank you, Kikkan, for being here this morning.
Well, my pleasure. Thanks, Philip, for the introduction. It is truly a pleasure to be with you on this Friday morning. I don't know about you guys, but it's been a busy week. And so it's always nice to cap it off by kind of thinking about all that we've accomplished and then looking ahead. And so Philip shared a little bit with me about your group and what you guys have been up to, growing, taking on challenges. Certainly the last couple of years have thrown a few curveballs. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of take my story as a cross-country skier, which can seem kind of random at times. But if you think about it, cross-country skiing is actually a really good metaphor for life. So the definition of a cross-country course is that it's 1/3 uphill, 1/3 downhill, and 1/3 flat. And I bet we can all kind of look into our lives and see that, in most cases, we're all going to encounter the uphills, the challenges when you're halfway up the grind and you're not sure you can make it, but you keep pushing through, you get to the top of that hill, you sail down the downhill, enjoy the fruits of those efforts, kind of cruise the flats for a while, and then all of a sudden you're hitting that next uphill. So my story began as an active kid growing up in Alaska. I vividly remember being 5 years old and sitting on the living room floor of my grandparents' house, watching my first Olympics on television. And as I watched the athletes parade into the stadium, I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And not really understanding the scope of everything, I turned to my parents and I said, "Hey, I want to go to the Olympics someday." And I think they were patient with my 5-year-old enthusiasm. But then as I kind of grew up and played different sports, I started to, that dream kind of stayed with me. I loved watching athletes push their limits, represent their country. So my Olympic ambitions took a few different forms. I played soccer. I tried snowboarding. I was terrible at that. I got into alpine skiing because in 1994, an Alaskan, Tommy Moe, won a gold medal in the downhill. And I got to meet Tommy at a local appearance. And so I thought, man, that's what I want to do. I want to go fast downhill. And it wasn't until I got into high school that I realized that cross-country skiing was actually kind of this open frontier, because I got to still have the speed of downhill. I was getting into running at the time, and I loved how you could really see the pure benefits of your effort. The 2002 Olympics were just 3 years away in Salt Lake City. And so again, kind of young and ambitious, I set my sights on making that Olympic team. And I remember when I told my high school coach that I wanted to make that team, he encouraged my ambition, but at the same time kind of explained that cross-country skiers, they're kind of like a fine wine. It takes years to reach your peak. And so, maybe a 3-year time span was going to be a little short. But, it was that dream that got me up every morning, and I got out there and I ended up qualifying and making my first Olympic team in Salt Lake City. I had just turned 19 years old. And I remember as I walked into the opening ceremonies, there were 80,000 people in the stands. I had my Team USA gear on, and my heart felt like it was going to beat out of my chest. I mean, an experience beyond what I had ever comprehended. So I went into those Olympics feeling motivated, ready to go, gave it my heart, and I ended up 61st place. But the day of my race, I was standing in the crowd afterwards, watching the medal winners go up on the podium. And I kind of glanced to the side and I noticed this banner that had the Olympic motto on it. And that was "Light the Fire Within." And in that moment, I literally kind of felt this like fire grow in my belly. And I saw a fellow North American stand on the podium for the first time ever. And I thought, you know what? No American woman has ever won an Olympic medal. Why not go for it? And so after those Olympics, I came home and sat down with my coach, who was a pretty analytical guy. And I said, help me understand how I could possibly go from 61st place with no roadmap or tradition to go on. How can I win an Olympic medal someday? So we kind of mapped out all the different intermediate steps I would need to take, getting World Cup experience, spending a lot of time in Europe, doing well against my age group, and gradually building up. Once we mapped it out, it was going to take 10 years. And at 19 years old, that was a really daunting amount of time. But at the same time, all of a sudden I had a roadmap in front of me. And of course, I was sure that I was going to get there faster by outworking and giving it everything, but I had my roadmap. So I started working on it season after season. And those first couple of seasons actually went pretty well. I was doing really well internationally against my age group. But then about 3 years in 2005, I kind of hit the wall. I remember I finished dead last at the World Championships. I was feeling very homesick, kind of mentally down, physically down. To top it off, our women's relay, I was preparing to ski the anchor leg, and we actually got pulled out of the race because we were about to be lapped by Norway. So after that season, I was starting to doubt my roadmap. I was starting to doubt whether it was ever going to be possible to make that goal. I was also seeing all of my colleagues who had gone off to university and getting their college degrees and starting their career. Meanwhile, I'm making no money. To top it all off, the US ski team decides to cut the entire women's program because they don't see any potential, and they're going to put their effort in a couple of guys they think maybe have an outside chance. So it would have been so tempting to just say, well, I gave it a good try, I'm going to walk away. But I kind of knew that wasn't a point to leave unfinished. I had set this checkpoint that by the 2006 Olympics, I wanted to get halfway towards my goal of finishing in the top 30. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to stick it out one more season. I'm going to try to make one more Olympic team. Then I will know I gave it my best, and I can evaluate after that. Well, it turns out that 4 years of experience between 2002 and 2006 ended up being a springboard for me. I finished 9th place in the sprint, completely surprised myself, surprised the team, and proved that I was actually not just on track on my goal, but I was actually ahead of schedule. And so going through that made me kind of think like, wow, a few months before I had almost walked away because it was hard, but thanks to having that roadmap and that checkpoint that had kept me focused, and then all of that experience building and training I'd done actually was a springboard. So that was exciting. I'm on the path. Now we look at the next 4 years. I start to hit the World Cup full time, but I'm the only US woman on the team. And I had a really positive high school experience where I was around lots of teammates. So it was pretty challenging for me to be over in Europe, often in a room by myself. The guys I was traveling with were nice enough, but they weren't such great conversationalists. So I would spend all day sitting in my room, thinking up conversation topics, and then I get to the dinner table, get one-word answers, and go back to the drawing board. So that experience definitely motivated me to think about building a team. Now, cross-country skiing is a sport that seems like a very individual endeavor, but there's actually a really big team component because it is something where you have to be in it for the long haul. There's going to be good days, but there's going to be a lot of bad days. There's going to be a lot of patience, and having teammates around you helps push you on the daily basis, keep the motivation up, and you're spending a considerable chunk of your life dedicated to this, so you might as well enjoy it with other people. So after that, I literally started going around and talking to my competitors in the rest of the US and invited them to come train with me because I knew that we needed to work together. And this was a bit challenging at first because we were a lot of very strong, independent women. We had our training plans. It was much easier to do our own thing. But we started to come together and it started to gel on the training course. But what really made the difference was we had a coach who reminded us that if we could harness the power of our team dynamics, almost like a family, maybe that could become our secret power. He told us we didn't have to be best friends, but if we could really support each other, really think about the energy we were bringing to the group and having everyone contribute their own leadership qualities, then that was going to be the way to success. So we literally forced ourselves to go for night walks, to go neon bowling, to do lip sync contests. But as we started to do that more and more, it became natural, and we did become a family. And as we started to become a family, the results started getting better and better. So those first couple of years, we were storming and norming, we're building the team. I'm getting my experience in the World Cup. I'd get a good result one weekend, but I'd get my butt kicked the next weekend. So I had to get really good at finding success in the smallest places. Now, I bet you guys are all pretty analytical, so you can appreciate this. I started logging all my races in a big Excel spreadsheet so that every performance, I could look at it from multiple angles. Sometimes the result didn't look so good on paper, but maybe I was closer to the winner than I'd ever been. So I logged those races, and as I looked at a season as a whole, I was able to see trends and positive things that kept me motivated. So now all of a sudden, 10 years has gone by, and I start winning on the World Cup level. As we come into the 2010 Olympics, I have won a World Cup in skate sprint. So in a theory, I should be poised to go after an Olympic medal. Except for one little thing. In cross-country skiing, we have two techniques. We have the more traditional classic style where your skis stay in tracks and you have to keep parallel. And then we have the newer, more dynamic skate style. We also have short distance events and long distance events. Well, I happen to be good at skate races, the more dynamic new style, in the short event. But that race is only contested at the Olympics every other games. So while I had a big result in 2006, I was actually going to have to wait till 2014 to have a chance. So the 2010 Olympics, while I wanted to be competing for medals, I knew I had to set my goals realistically on something that would be challenging but achievable, and that was to do a top 12 in the classic sprint. Nothing sexy by most standards, and of course the media loves to talk about only medals. So that whole experience was a really good chance for me to stay focused on what my own goals were and not what external pressures were, and to think about that I was setting myself up for a beautiful runway into 2014 where I would have a chance at my best Olympics. So that 10 years really did matter. That was the time I needed to build up the training and experience, and it was fun. I started to win World Cups on a regular basis. I ended up winning the overall World Cup Sprint Globe. Jesse and I surprised everyone and won a gold medal in the team sprint in 2013. So coming into the 2014 Olympics, everything was coming together just right. I was considered the gold medal favorite in the skate sprint. And for the first time, I had the national spotlight on cross-country skiing. I got to be on a cereal box. I did some skiing on a fake snow carpet in Brooklyn. It was all a whole new world, and I was trying my best to balance this new spotlight, getting to talk about my sport and my team, with the expectations that come with being a gold medal favorite, and of course the training. As we came into the 2014 Olympics, I was confident. The day before the race, I'm out there doing my pre-race workout, and I decide to make myself a promise. I know all that has gone into this work, and so I decide that if I go out the next day and I ski as well as I possibly can, I take risks, I leave the course with no regret, with literally no ounce of energy in my body, then no matter what happens, I can walk away satisfied. And as I'm telling myself this, I can picture standing on that podium. I can feel this happening. So we get out there the next day and it's 60 degrees. What? I thought we were at the Winter Olympics. It was crazy. Like the snow was literally melting under our feet, turning into mashed potatoes. So they were throwing salt over the course to try to keep it firm. So that meant some spots were firm and some were soft. And it was challenging conditions. But I didn't panic because I had skied on the glaciers in Alaska in the summertime, facing those adverse conditions so many times that it felt comfortable to me. Then I get my quarterfinal heat draw, and I'm up against two of the other heavy gold medal favorites, and only two of us will move on to the semifinals. But again, I feel confident because I've been racing these women all season, and I know I have a good race plan. So my plan was to go out hard, path the gun, hammer everybody up the course's main climb, and then just lead to the finish. Sounded easy enough. So the gun goes off, I get out to the front, I'm toiling through that soft snow, but I get to the front and I hammer up that main climb as hard as I can. By the time I get to the top, my legs are just burning with lactic acid and my heart is pumping so much. And with the crowd, I can't even really hear what's going on behind me. As we come down into the stadium, the snow gets really soft and we go around this hairpin turn and I feel one ski start to come off the ground. But thanks to all those years of alpine skiing, I get it back onto the ground, I stay cool, and I sail into the stadium in the lead. As I'm getting ready to come off the final turn, I'm thinking to myself, all right, I'm going to kick it into my final gear. But then I realize I'm kind of already in my final gear. But I'm onto the home stretch now and I can see the finish. So I'm pumping with everything I have and I start to feel these shadows come up beside me. And man, we are getting close to that finish and I'm giving everything, but these shadows are creeping up. And then just before the line, I lunge and I see a flash out of the corner of my eye. So we stop, I look at the scoreboard and I'm not first and I'm not second. So I'm not going to automatically advance, but I'm in a photo finish for third, and whoever wins that photo finish moves on as the lucky loser to the semifinals. So I wait for that result. And when it comes out, I've lost the photo finish by 0.05 of a second. I will not be going on to fight for the medals. My day is done. So you can imagine the emotion that hits you in that moment. I mean, your whole career has been building up to this race. But immediately I thought of that promise that I had made myself the day before. And that is, if you go out and ski as hard as you can, take risks, no regrets, then no matter what, you can walk away satisfied. So I clung on to that as I left the finish area and I walked through the media who were all there that day to capture history. I was explaining how I did my race plan. I gave it everything. That's all you can do. And I was doing pretty well until I came to my hometown news crew from Alaska, who reminded me that all of Alaska was up in the middle of the night to watch me and asked what I had to say to them. And I'm not going to lie, I choked up for a minute because that's when it set in that what I was doing that day was not just about a ski race. I had brought so many people along the journey with me. And this was my moment to probably share one of the most important lessons of all, in that we're going to go after big dreams. We're going to do the preparation. We're going to give it everything because we believe it can happen. But sometimes you don't quite get that gold medal. And you know what? Life is okay, because I knew I had a couple races still to go at those Olympics. So a couple more races, I reframed, got set, went out, gave it everything, but those gears just weren't quite there. So at the end of those Olympics, I was leaving without a medal. And I knew I would not get another shot at a skate sprint in the Olympics for 8 more years. So I had a big decision to make. Do I keep going? I'd had a pretty good career. I mean, outside of the Olympic medal, I'd done more than I ever imagined. My husband and I wanted to start a family. But at the same time, I had just put in all the work and it was just getting fun. And most importantly, our team had come to this incredible place. We were having so much fun together and we were competing strong in relays. And I realized that even though I wouldn't maybe be a contender in an individual event in 2018, I could be there to help the team. So I negotiated a little bit with my husband. We got strategic and I ended up taking a season off. I had a baby and I decided to come back to racing. Now, again, this was a little bit of an unknown experience because there's no textbook out there about how to have a baby and come back to World Cup competition. There were a lot of doubts, but at the same time, there were a lot of possibilities. And I just approached it with curiosity. And it turned out that babies make a great weight vest. I was able to train through my pregnancy. And when I came back, when my son was born and I came back to training, I had a totally refreshed outlook. It was no longer about how good the workout went or didn't go, what the race result was about. It was about getting to get out there to chase my goal while doing it with my family. And no matter what the result, I got to come home to a little baby that was happy to see me. And that was the perspective I needed after so many years of just chasing goals, that the goals are important. That's what makes us feel alive. But there are important things that really support that in our lives. So I worked my way back and came into the 2018 season with high hopes, knowing that it would be my last. Now, remember that team I'd talked about building, encouraging my teammates and getting together? Well, the one part I hadn't really thought about was how my teammates might actually get better than me. So as we came into that 2018 season, I was kind of nervous. I wasn't even sure I was going to make our own team. To top it off, I got a stress fracture in my foot 6 weeks before the Olympics. I was freaking out. But thankfully, I had faced a few times in my career where I realized when you're thrust into a challenging situation, you have to get really good at figuring out what you can control and what you can't. And it took a few creative strategies, but I was able to train in the pool. I had my son there to kind of give me the balanced perspective, and I just did everything that I could do to put myself in a position to perform. And thankfully, after 3 weeks of that alternative training, we got my foot to a point where we were at least sure I wasn't going to do more damage. I had some lidocaine cream that I could put on it, and I got to go to the Olympics. But there was no guarantee that I would get any race starts because my teammates were all skiing incredibly strong. So I started to mentally prepare myself for the fact that I may be on the sidelines cheering my team on. But the preparation for that had actually been years in the works, because one of our team mantras was that because we were all working together and supporting each other, particularly when it came to relay events, no matter which skiers were on the snow, we all played a part in that. We know we each wanted to be on that team, but if we weren't chosen for the team that day, we were still going to be invested in the success, and we were still going to be out there supporting the team. So I just took it day by day, seizing any opportunity I was given and just being prepared for anything. So as it came close to the team sprint, which is the 2-person team event, it's in the skate style, which is my favorite. We knew the US had an outside shot at a medal, but we also knew 8 women could make up that 2-person team. So 36 hours before the race, I'm sitting in my hotel room at 10 o'clock at night, sitting next to one of my teammates, and the coach walks in. They had pretty much already decided that one spot was going to be Jessie Diggins on the team because she was skiing incredible. In fact, she had narrowly missed the medal days before. But the other spot had really come down to between my teammate Sadie and I. So the coach lays out his reasoning, and man, he dragged it out. But when he came to the decision, he announced they had decided to go with me. So I am hearing the most incredible news, like, oh my gosh, I get to go out and do this one more time. But at the same time, my teammate is hearing the opposite news. She has now maybe missed out on a chance to compete for a medal. So what was so incredible in that moment is her first reaction was to turn straight to me, look me in the eyes and say, I believe in you. What can I do to help? And that was the most incredible show of team spirit, and why all of that working together over all those years mattered so much. And it gave me and Jessie motivation going into the next day to know we weren't just out there competing for ourselves, we were competing for our team and our country. So I'd like to say that the next day I played it totally calm and cool, but we were up against some of the greatest athletes of all time in our sport. Norway had a stacked team, Sweden had a stacked team, and I knew in particular that on my leg, I was going to be up against women who had already won medals at those Olympics. And I was known more of a sprinter, like I could hang in for a lap or two, but it was unknown, especially with the injury, of whether or not I'd be able to hang in there for all 3 laps. So I tried my best not to think about that, and instead focused on pulling on my relay socks, hanging out with my teammates. Jessie and I would put on our favorite music and dance around. You know, it's amazing how you can take some silly things to just kind of help stay focused and quell those nerves. When I arrived at the stadium that night, it was the most Olympic feeling race of my career. The butterflies were flying in my stomach, but I was determined to get them to fly in formation. So I skied the first leg. As the gun went off, I just tucked myself into the crowd. So a team sprint is a really chaotic race because each racer has to race 3 laps, and you're tagging off to your teammate in between. You're coming into these exchange zones at about 20 miles an hour. There's 10 teams spread out. There's skis, there's poles, crashes can happen. So I knew I not only had to ski fast, but I actually had to stay out of trouble. So I tuck myself in, I make it around the first lap. Things are looking pretty good. Jessie goes out for her first lap. Now in between, the skiers go into this pit area, and the wax technicians re-wax the skis. So my skis are on the bench. I'm kind of jogging around, and all of a sudden I see Jesse and the leaders start to come into the stadium, and my skis are still on the bench. So I kind of tap the coaches on the shoulder and say, they're coming. And we scramble to get those skis off. I get them on my feet like literally 3 seconds before that exchange happened. Years of practice, I guess, prepare you for that. So now we go into the second lap, and now I know this is when the pace is going to crank up. And sure enough, it does. Marit Bjørgen from Norway, one of the greatest athletes of all time, and Charlotte Kalla from Sweden, they are pumping all out. So again, I just have to hone myself right on them and just keep us right there and locked in. And I end up making it through the lap all together, and I tag off to Jessie. Now I know I have 1 lap remaining. Jessie is feeling great, and she decides she's up against 2 of the other world champion sprinters, so she's going to ski their legs off a bit. So she makes a big move on lap 2, and as she comes into the exchange zone for my final lap, we're leading the race, and we're down to 3 teams. As we head out of the stadium, I'm playing it cool, trying not to burn too much energy, and I feel Norway and Sweden come around me. So that's not so bad. They'll block the wind. But as they get in front, I start to feel a little bit of a gap start to build. And I know I cannot let that happen. So I put my head down and I ski as hard as I can, almost to the point where I skied into the back of the Swedish racer. I was so pumped with adrenaline. As we went up the course's main climb, which as Philip described earlier, it was a pretty massive monster. I skied harder than I've ever skied in my life. But I believe that all those years of preparation came into play at that moment. And I was so in the zone. I was ready to roll my eyes back into my head if I had to. But I kept connection, made it up and over the top of the hill. The legs were definitely wobbly on the descent, but I came into the exchange zone, tagged off to Jessie in medal contention, and got to fall down in the snow in complete physical agony, and yet feeling the most exhilaration from knowing that I had done my job and that my teammate now had the reins. So it took me a few moments to pick myself up, but as I'm getting up, I see Jessie and Norway and Sweden starting to descend into the stadium. And now we're on the final lap. So as I watch, I'm going, oh my gosh, we might win a medal. And then at the same second I have that thought, I see Norway bump Sweden. Jessie swings wide to the point where she actually has to leave the course for a second. And now I'm not even sure I can watch. But Jessie miraculously swings back through, finds a gap between Norway and Sweden. And as they come off the final turn, she's put herself in position to challenge Sweden for the gold. So I'm running over to the finish and I'm like, there's photographers everywhere and I'm trying to peek around. And as they come off that final turn, I just start screaming at the top of my lungs. But Sweden is right next to me, screaming at the top of her lungs. So I scream louder, and it's almost like we're trying to will our teammates to the finish line. They're sprinting, and from our view, it's head on. So just before the finish line, I see that lunge again. This time, though, when I look at the scoreboard, I see number 1, United States, 0.19. Wait a second. We didn't just win a medal. We won the gold medal. And I was so unprepared for that moment. I let out this ugly, awkward yell. I ran over and tackled Jessie, and somehow she still had enough energy to say, did we just win the Olympics? And we had this incredible moment. But what was so cool was that our entire team was right there. All of those women that could have easily been in our shoes and had worked together with us side by side over all those years were right there sharing this historic moment with us. And that was the best thing I could have ever asked for, to share that moment. We finally did it. We broke the glass ceiling. We've won a gold medal for the US team and the first ever women's medal. So the next night we're standing up on the awards podium and I lean over to have the medal put around my neck, and I literally almost fall off the podium because these things are so heavy. But I think it's appropriate as I feel the weight around my neck and I see that flag be raised. It made me think about all of the journey that had led up to it. The fact that this had started as a crazy idea after finishing so far off the back of the pack, it seemed hopeless. And yet taking that big dream, laying it out into a roadmap to make it seem possible, staying committed to the checkpoints along the way, building a team around me so that it became more about the experience and less about just the results. Definitely using some things along the way to keep myself focused through those periods of adversity, and ultimately leading to the best outcome, winning a medal with a teammate. So that is just about the best ending I could have ever asked for. And while I was a little bit sad to walk away from my ski career, I was also really excited for the next chapter of my life. A few months later, my family and I had moved down to British Columbia. We were following my husband's job. My son was 2 at the time. It was Mother's Day, and it was the most beautiful day. And I remember thinking to myself, this is amazing. Like, life can't get any better. This is just awesome. And then getting ready for bed that night, I happened to brush past a hard spot on my chest. Small, but I had never noticed it before. And I suddenly had kind of a sinking feeling. So I went into the doctor the next day, and it took a couple of weeks. At first, I was assured that I was young and healthy and it was probably nothing, but I should probably get some scans to be sure. We got the scans. The scans looked a little bit suspicious, so I got a biopsy. But this whole time, I'm feeling in amazing shape. I'm thinking about all the things I'm going to do. And I'm actually on the way to a friend's wedding in Sweden when I get the call from the doctor. The biopsy reveals I have an aggressive form of breast cancer, and I need to start treatment right away. My whole world just stopped. How could this possibly be real? I just won an Olympic gold medal. I'm healthy, I'm active, I'm young. Like, this can't be possible. This isn't fair. Wait a second. I have a family. I have a son. Am I going to survive? The swirl of emotions made my mind feel like a maze of it was like looping and swirling. And it was a feeling unlike anything I'd ever experienced in my life. And yet, as all that chaos was happening, I found myself reflexively going back to the same things that I did as an athlete. And that is, okay, we've got to take a deep breath. We got to slow down. What can we control? What do we know? What is just a guess? What do we don't know? What's not helpful? And being able to kind of just recognize that conversation in my mind and kind of refocus on the things that were actually going to move me forward gave me some structure in those first few days to start focusing on my treatment. And here again, I was going to need an incredible team, except this time I wasn't going to be the strong one out there leading it. I was going to be the person that needed to be reminded that I was strong, that I could do this. I was going to need an amazing medical team. I was going to need some people to pick me up on those really tough days. And while it was easy to feel like I needed to keep this inside, I needed to handle this myself, I decided to make the choice to be open about it and to be open to help. And that was the best decision I could have made, because this was the most challenging thing I'd ever encountered, and there's no way I could have handled it alone. So we built a plan, I built my team, and I started into treatment. I had 6 rounds of chemotherapy, surgeries, and 8 weeks of radiation. Through it all, it was definitely one of the most challenging experiences of my life, because I had so much little control compared to what I used to. This wasn't a challenge that I could just simply find an alternative method of training or outwork it or outwill. All I could do was literally focus on doing my best every single day. So I did. I kind of kept my moment right in front of me. And I'd also picked up these pair of rainbow colored running shoes that I had ordered when I was dealing with the stress fracture before the Olympics. And so I saw those shoes and I decided, you know what, I'm going to wear those to my doctor's appointments and all my chemotherapy sessions. It's just that little reminder to myself that when it all feels overwhelming, I'm just going to look at my feet and I'm going to remind myself it's going to be okay. And my team and I found ourselves repeating this mantra. It's going to be okay. When it gets overwhelming, you pull it back in. So I ended up coming up with some socks that are brightly colored. They say it's going to be okay. And those have been a really fun project to kind of take the focus off myself and put something out into the world that I think can help everybody, whether you're going through a challenge or facing or chasing after a big goal. I mean, they're kind of equal paths. So because I was able to create a great plan and have an amazing team and kind of stay focused through those really tough moments, my treatment went about as well as I could have hoped. And at the end, as far as we know, I'm cancer free. But unfortunately, cancer is not something that you can just toss in the rearview mirror and go, whoa, that was a chapter. It's something that will always be ever present. But the gift it's given me is to no longer take anything for granted, for sure. Now, as much as I am hopeful and planning for the future and starting to create my next 10-year plan and going after big goals, I'm also remembering to make the most of every day with the people that are most important and doing the things in my life that are most important. So that was a wild few months from going to winning a gold medal to going through cancer. Then, of course, the world went through COVID and we all dealt with that uncertainty. So now I'm kind of in a fun position where I feel like, I am developing what that next plan is, what I want the future to be. And while it can be intimidating at times because the future is so wide open in this world, I find myself still using these same skills of building the roadmap, creating the team, and just being prepared with my toolbox of all those tricks to keep me focused on the positive and hopeful for the future and taking it day by day. And so I want to tie that back in to the group that we have here, because I know you guys are in it. You're a lot of motivated, goal setting kind of people. You're probably taking on some big ambitious goals and probably facing a lot of challenges too. I know with the market, man, things are unpredictable and there's anything can go. But hopefully you can find some of these same tools will apply to your paths and journeys, and have a lot of confidence that as tough as things are at times, sometimes the best things come after something hard. One of my favorite quotes is, "No pressure, no diamonds." And so I'm going to end here with that. It's Friday. We're going to enjoy the weekend coming up, and then we're going to hit the ground running Monday. There's so much ahead to look forward to. So.
Kikkan, thank you. Thank you. Two things first of all, well, number one, I think a lot of us suffer stress fractures on a daily basis, but maybe not of the same type. So secondly, I now can say I know somebody who has been on a cereal box, and I think that's pretty awesome. I do want to open it up to questions though for other folks, but I've got one. I'm really curious. I mean, at every stage, you seem to have been able to tap into a reserve of grit or of resilience, and I'm just curious, like what was it that you tapped into that let you go back and follow the plan, because a lot of folks could have, it's easy to stop, it's easy to change the goal, right? Move the goalposts. What do you think was unique in you that let you go, keep coming back for more?
Yeah. Well, I think I was fortunate to have some great role models in my life and coaches in particular that, always kind of reminded me that, if you stay focused on kind of what's in front of you and what you can do, then, why can't things turn around? Why can't you get back to where you want to go? Why can't you get on track to your goal? So in high school, I was a standout runner, but faced a couple of big injuries, like right at inopportune times. I broke my collarbone leading into cross-country running season my sophomore year, and then 8 months later broke 4 vertebrae in my back doing a fun cross-country ski race a week into track season. And so my coach at the time, he said, well, okay, you can't run, but we can put you on an exercise bike, and we'll put the exercise bike next to the team when they're warming up, so you feel like you're still a part of something. And, I had to go to the pool and I had to aqua jog, which I'll tell you is the most boring thing in the world, but actually builds incredible fitness. And so I had that coaching early on. I think that, you just kind of have to focus on what you can do. And that's where kind of the plan comes in, because when you already have a predetermined plan or roadmap and some checkpoints, it takes the pressure off the judgment on a minute to minute or daily basis. It's almost like you've made some decisions. Well, I'm just going to do this for the next week, and I'm just going to do it, and I'm going to see what happens. And there's kind of like, I can get to the end of the week and I can reevaluate then. I'll have much better information to go on. And so I think that's kept me through those critical periods where you're going up that hill. Like I started with, you're going up the hill and, all those warning bells are going off in your mind. Like, you can't do this, there's plenty of excuses, but you just kind of go, you know what, I've decided I'm going to give it a try. And the more you do that, kind of the more instinctive that becomes. And, I still will face things in my daily life where I'll feel like overwhelmed and I'll start to get that panic. And I just kind of go, okay, bring it back. What can I do right now? And I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to do the next thing. And I'm just going to kind of see it through. And so I really think we can all look into our own lives probably and find a time where we talked ourselves through it to kind of get over the hump. And then that's when the beautiful things happen, because your mind is almost like free. Like you're just kind of like, you know what? I've got nothing to lose. I'm just going to go out there. I'm free. I'm maybe not tightening up with all the expectations. So, that said, it's not always easy. And I didn't know I was doing it at the time, but that's kind of the pattern it followed almost in every experience.
You built a habit around trusting the plan.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Interesting. I want to throw it up if you've got time to maybe for some questions from other folks. Take yourself off mute, jump right in. Who's got a question? Who's got a comment?
I got a question.
Share. Wally, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. Good. This was absolutely amazing. And in our industry in sales, one of the things that people dislike a lot is prospecting. Getting on the phones and talking to strangers. You see the heads bobbing. Yep. So in preparing to win a gold medal, what were the things you did that you didn't like? Like, I hate this part of training. I hate having to get up at this time of the day. What did you really dislike? And yet by doing it, that was a key part in winning the gold medal.
Definitely. Well, I think part of it is just kind of the dedication to the lifestyle. Early on, my family would be going to a reunion that happened to overlap with a training camp. And so it was kind of making that decision of, there's the fun thing, but I know how important this training camp is going to be. And I also, communicate well with my family. So they're kind of supportive. So, I'm going to kind of do what I need to do. There were also, we're a sport that are outside and there's a lot of adverse weather conditions. I referenced training on the glaciers. In the summertime, we would fly up to the glacier every weekend. And we would live up there for a week at a time, skiing twice a day. And most of the time we were like in the clouds, the snow wasn't always great. And man, I could not wait to get out of there. But I skied myself into the ground every one of those weeks. And not only did that physically build up my capacity, but then when I did encounter that challenging situation at the Olympics, it wasn't intimidating because I've been here before. And so I really do think that when we do work through those things that we don't want to do, that builds that resilience muscle a little bit. And you also just kind of remind yourself, like, I'm doing this because it's putting a block in my pyramid and that's building the foundation that's going forward. This is something I can do. And I'm going to just choose to say, why can't it lead to something? If we don't try, if we don't ask, we don't get anywhere. So I just kind of use that mindset to push myself through things that I don't like. The other thing that motivated me was maple glazed donuts. If I had a particularly tough training session, I would remind myself that if I gave it all, if I didn't back down, kind of hit my targets, then I could hit the grocery store on the way home. So I think those little rewards are also important.
I'm building my pyramid one maple glazed donut at a time.
There you go.
That's awesome. Joe, going to you.
Aloha from Hawaii. This is Joe. Thank you for sharing your story. What stuck out to me was you mentioned teamwork and foundation and support. That really resonates with me. So thank you. I'm curious to check in with you to see how are you still connected with your teammates now? Because it sounds like you've transitioned to different levels in your life. And then maybe what's one or two team lessons that you feel could apply in our industry or to us today?
Yeah, great questions. I'm glad this part of the story resonated because I think it's my favorite part. I think about like all these great, medals and things I have sitting around, but what really stands out from the career was the moments I had with my teammates and probably the moments where we were just absolutely terrible, So what's cool, what was initially a little bit tough for me is that when I retired from sport, the people that I had been around on a daily basis were no longer a part of my daily life. And I didn't realize how much they had kind of provided that like structure and identity for me. And so then that made me extra motivated to stay in touch. Even though we wouldn't be together training, we actually fired up a text chain on iMessage that we all race to be the first one to say rabbit, rabbit on the first of the month. We send pictures of what we're up to. You know, a lot of my teammates are having kids now, so we're sharing kid photos. We're talking about what the current team is up to. We've added team, you know, a lot of the younger members of the team who maybe I didn't even overlap with are now part of some of the text chains so that we can kind of all stay connected and encouraged. So that's been a super part. I mean, we did really build this incredible kind of family of being on the road. And even though we're not together now, we still have that identity and we still support each other. And I just moved a couple months ago and I'm now within half a mile of 2 of my former teammates. So we still, you know, we still get together. We're like busy moms now, but we put on our roller skis and we still go out and hammer around. So that's pretty cool. So then what,
Very
you know,
cool.
what are the, maybe a couple of the team messages that I think would be most helpful for this group? That thing I talked about where sometimes it's easier to do your own thing. Like when my career was really taking off, I was definitely the kind of veteran and leader of the team. And there were kind of all these younger athletes and we were spread across the country. So US, big geographic area, you know, it was so much easier for me to just do what I wanted and stay in Alaska. But I kind of left my comfort zone by saying, you know what, I'll fly across the country. I'll do a training camp with you. I even went over to Europe and started like kind of cold calling my competitors to ask if I could come train with them. And in doing so, we would push each other. We got to know each other and found out that even though we're fierce competitors on the trail, we're actually pretty similar people. And so I think recognizing when you have that tendency to want to just do it yourself, take the time to reach out. The other thing about that is that when you're going through a hard period, that can be exactly the time to spend a little energy on your teammates. So when I left that finish area in 2014, feeling absolutely devastated, I ran over to where my team area was, and my teammate, who was in her first Olympics, had actually made it through to the semifinals. So I just told her everything I could think of about the course, about strategy, and I kind of, you know, pumped her up confidence-wise. And that hopefully helped her, but most importantly, helped me kind of process the struggle I was going through. And I found that at several points through my career that when I was having a downtime, if I actually poured my energy into helping a teammate with a technique advice or, you know, loading bags into the van, it was like the little distraction I needed to not go down the rabbit hole of negative thoughts. I kind of get myself back on. And I think when we do pour energy into others, there's something very uplifting about that.
Yeah, you can't go down that doom spiral if you're focusing on somebody else.
Yeah. And I
Or
will
at least
actually
it's
add
harder to.
one more critical thing that I think really helped our team. We decided that we wanted to carry a positive team equilibrium. So given on a race weekend, we're all out performing. Some of us are going to have amazing days and we're going to be up here. And some of us are going to have the worst day. Maybe we're missing home and we broke up with somebody and we're going to be down here. So if you're up here, awesome, that's great. You know, bring some of that positive energy, but recognize and be sympathetic to this person who might be having a bad day and bring your enthusiasm down a little bit. Meanwhile, if you're the one who's struggling a little bit, maybe, you know, don't be Debbie Downer. Bring your energy kind of back up because our energies affect each other. And so we always kind of want to keep it in the zone. And so discussing that ahead of time and kind of setting that as our team policy, I think definitely helped alleviate things that could have been tensions, things that could have driven people one way or the other, and ultimately really helped us out a lot.
So that was a conscious team decision to create that culture. Is that right? Did I hear that? Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we did a lot of talking about the environment we wanted to have, how we wanted to interact with each other. We took time to get to know each other in terms of like what pushes our own buttons. You know, what does each person need in given situations? For some people, when they have a bad day, they need a hug. And for some people, don't touch them, right? But knowing that ahead of time means that you don't inadvertently come in and do the wrong thing. And, you know, we had fun with it. We took personality tests. We read books together and kind of discussed, you know, what we were learning. And I think being very intentional about talking about these things, particularly talking about a challenging situation you might encounter and how you might want to deal with it was very important. Like the relay thing. When we first started talking about it, we could barely field a relay, let alone be competitive. But we talked about being in a position someday where we would have so many people on the team that it was going to be a very hard decision to choose who would be the four on the snow. And then those people might be in a position to win a medal when others would not. And how would we handle that? And that was talking about how we collectively all put our efforts forward, and no matter who is on the snow, everybody is a part of every success.
You didn't know that would be the circumstance, but the contingency had been addressed. This is what we will do if this happens. Yeah.
Exactly.
Who brought that to the table? Sorry, I'm just,
Yeah.
this is really interesting. I mean, who brought that vision to the team? Was it the athletes? Was it the coach? Was it collective?
I think we were really fortunate. We had this coach, Matt Whitcomb. He was a young guy. He loved to read, and he was always kind of finding ideas. And he was the one who kind of recognized that we were starting to gel as a group, partially that had been initiated by me of getting everyone together and trying to, lead on the training ground. But it was thinking about what we could do off the training field and getting us to think about these things that almost weren't even in the realm of, we weren't even thinking about yet, but thinking ahead, being proactive. And it felt a little silly, but man, that made all the difference. And I think that brought us really closer. So.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Good. Who else has got a question? We got a couple minutes before the top of the hour here. I want to respect everybody's time. Anybody else have a question, comment, something to throw out there?
This is your chance. I mean, I know
I don't
you guys
necessarily
don't know
have a
if this is made
question.
of chocolate or not.
Exactly. Got to give it a bite.
Yeah.
Kyle, go.
I don't know if I have a question. I just observations. Thank you so much. This has been really, really powerful and very, very helpful today. So thank you for that. I just kept hearing teamwork, right? No one succeeds alone. Leaning into those that maybe you're facing adversity. Roadmap, plan, like just following the plan, trusting it. I think the last thing that you said is just really stuck is every time you hit adversity, you really just slowed down and said, what can I control? What can I not control? And really readjusting that energy and just slowing down to potentially speed up. I just want to say thank you for that, because those are the things I kept hearing in your story. Just teamwork, roadmap, slowing down what I can and can't control. And I think it's just a good reminder, because I think a lot of us, including myself, feels like sometimes we're always on the hamster wheel and just slowing down. So thank you for that.
Well, thanks for that feedback.
Yeah, that tendency, you hit the hard spot. Well, I'm going to run faster in a new direction, right? We accelerate, running enthusiastically off course. Yeah.
I'm going to just make one more comment, Coach, if you allow me. I want to
absolutely, Juan, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. The last thing you also said about enjoying the ride as well, just not focusing on those goals, because we forget about living in the now. And I'm guilty about that, because we try to achieve so much that we forget the reason why we want to achieve. And I mean, you having a baby is an amazing thing. I have 3 girls, and I have to remind myself, my wife, of course, right? So sometimes we get so hooked on our goals and our end result that we forget about why we're doing the things we're doing, and not taking the time to appreciate those that are next to us, dealing with our crazy lives and our crazy schedules, and being able to enjoy life. So congrats on your success, and thank you for sharing everything. It was awesome.
Well,
very cool.
Thank you for sharing that as well. Yeah, I have to say, cancer, well, it has certainly been a very interesting journey that I never would have expected myself to go through, particularly, right after winning Olympic gold medal. It really has given me a gift, because I think coming off a 20-year ski career, it would have been really easy to be focused on that next thing, that next 10-year plan, and going. And cancer really gave me the chance to think about make sure don't just do what you can do, but think about what you really want to do and what matters. And so right now I took a role as the executive director of the Nordic Skiing Association here in Anchorage. It's kind of the grassroots organization that I came up through. And what it's providing me is like a chance to stay connected to skiing, to have an impact on youth and sport and health, but it's the perfect balance for me with my family right now. And, there were any number of things I could have chased in New York or LA, had great connections in the sport world, but this is striking the right balance for me, and I'm able to really enjoy every day.
And we're thrilled to have her. I've already told her that offline. I'm going to say it again. We are thrilled that she is in this role, because as a Nordic skiing parent, I've already seen changes in it, and they're all good. So thank you. 2 things. I put 2 links in the chat box. Number one is it's a 2-minute clip of the end of the race in 2018. The longer clip is 32 minutes and 9 seconds long. I know that because I've watched it somewhat obsessively. It is an amazing ski race, and I encourage you to go find that on YouTube. Kikkan, I also put your webpage link out there. Is there any other way, if we want to interact with you, how do we find you? How do we stay in touch with you out in the world of the socials?
Yes, well, I love interacting with people, and just, thank you for those that shared today, what the messages meant to you, because it's so fun. We all, I have this random experience of ski racing around the world, but we all have a lot of have a lot of shared experience. And so I'm very active on Instagram. You can always, DM me there, Facebook as well. And then through my website, you can always reach out. And I mentioned that It's Going to Be Okay socks. I use those as a fundraiser to support the American Cancer Society. So feel free to get on there, check it out. The socks are really fun and colorful. There's some headbands and other products as well. And like I said, it goes and supports a good cause. So I'd appreciate if yeah, there you go.
And there's the page.
So
good. Kikkan, thank you. On behalf of everybody here, thank you. And thank you personally. We are just so grateful that you shared the time.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing your time as well. And maybe next time we'll see you in person.
Absolutely. Look forward to that. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Enjoy the rest of the day. Have an amazing week. And we'll catch up on Monday. See you.